Really appreciate all the kind and concerned messages I received after my collapse at the Great Ocean Trail Ultra. And many of you have been wondering what actually happened. So let's look at what and why it did happen. I'll stick with the short version of what led into the collapse, as the race video will be linked at the end of this or in the description below. The first half of the race pretty much went to plan, albeit just a bit slower than originally predicted. I felt good going through the 55 kilometre aid station at Joanna Beach, much better than I did 8 years earlier. And from there, the race did get hotter, much hotter than expected, and I was feeling it. Then at about 70 kilometres, I started feeling dizzy, lightheaded, and I took a sit down to get myself feeling better. I drank some extra water, the dizziness subsided a bit, didn't completely go away, but I slowed right down, took it easy, tried to drink my water, which I got through all of it, and in hindsight, I didn't carry enough for this section. But then at about 73 or so kilometres into the race, while I was hiking really slow uphill, all of a sudden I found myself lying on my front on the ground. Now, I didn't know what happened. The guy behind me said that I just fell, like collapsed to the ground, didn't put my hands out, didn't protect myself. I was conscious straight away, but I don't remember the fall, the faint, or the collapse. I remained sitting on the ground for some time, just hoping to feel better. The dizziness was bad. I felt like complete rubbish. And then after, I don't know how long, I eventually stood up. It made the dizziness worse. I felt horrible. Had a few other runners come by, help me out. One went ahead to let them know that I was in a bit of trouble. Turns out there was a water drop about 1.5 kilometres further up, and they sent a couple of people down to help assist me up there. And that involved walking really slow uphill. And as I did so, the dizziness got worse. So I stopped and sat down so many times, lost count. In fact, I don't know how long it took me, but it took a long time. Once at that water drop, I lay down, feet up, trying to get some perfusion to my head. I felt like rubbish, and I drank a lot of water with electrolytes and ate a bit of food. It was actually hard for that to go down, and I still was trying to find a way to keep going for this race. I really wanted to finish, and I had that stuck in my head, but I had to pass the first test. I had to have the ability to sit up without getting lightheaded and dizzy. And despite getting maybe a litre of fluid in with electrolytes, a little bit of food, after a full hour, it didn't happen. I couldn't pass the sit test, let alone didn't get to the stand-up test, let alone go and get to the walk or even run test. I had someone who knew what they were doing there, really good on the first aid side of things. They were also in contact with the race doctor, and since I didn't get better over all that time, my support crew, which was Dad and Marilyn, they came down, got me into the van, and took me to the finish line to see the race doctor. The plan became head from the 12 Apostles all the way into Apollo Bay urgent care centre where they could probably do some bloods, check me for some other things, put me on an ECG, just rule out some things and hopefully get me a bit healthy. That was a long car trip. Had to stop a few times. I really thought it was going to chunder, and nearly did. Nothing came out, but man, I felt sick during that whole car ride. Urgent care centre, did 12 lead ECGs, took some bloods, checked troponin and a number of other things, but they only had an iStat machine, so there's some limitation as to the accuracy and maybe validity of some of the pathology results from the blood. There's a few question marks on the ECG, so they consulted with Geelong Hospital, spoke with cardiology, and I got transferred by ambulance to Geelong Hospital. There I spent 2 days at hospital. First got cleared of a number of things in the emergency department, and then the 2 days in cardiology. So that's what happened. Let's look into the why and think about the most likely suspects. First and foremost is dehydration, so volume depletion. So I didn't drink enough for the conditions, and I felt like I was like early stages. The temperature, it was cold. I was drinking about 250 mils per hour, urinating pretty much every hour. That ended up going out to every 90 minutes as the race progressed. As it warmed up, I increased my fluid intake from that about 250 mils per hour up to about 500 per hour, which, based on all my pre-work and what I predicted for the race, was enough. Gradual dehydration as the race goes on, but you don't really want to take in 100% of your fluid losses. That can more likely lead to hyponatremia, so low blood sodium. So everything made sense there. I do think I didn't appreciate the actual heat. So I probably went from being down 100 mils per hour at the start to 200 mils as that discrepancy happened, and it increased. But with how hot it got from about the halfway point, I was probably losing about 400 mils per hour that I wasn't replacing. So dehydration certainly and most likely played a factor. Next on the list is electrolyte disturbance, particularly sodium, but you can include calcium, magnesium, potassium in it as well. And it's quite likely I was taking in electrolytes through all my drinking. I was putting in about 1,000 milligrams of sodium per litre in the fluid that I was having. I was having that through Precision Fuel and Hydration electrolyte tablets. And my bloods said there was absolutely no issue with the electrolytes, so we can rule that one out. The next likely culprit is the reason I spent so long in hospital, and that's cardiac, so a heart problem. Good news is I didn't feel any chest pain or chest discomfort during that time. No palpitations, no big strong beats, no gaps or feeling like my heart was missing any beats, or no big fast fluttery feelings in the chest. So none of those other warning signs or things that would give rise to make you think it is the heart. But some of the concern is the collapse itself was while I was moving. So the legs, when they're moving, they provide a bit of pump of the blood back up to the heart to keep the preload happening, so the there's enough pressure going into the heart so it pumps out enough. Sometimes you get collapses at the ends of races when people stop and they lose that pump. So the fact that I fainted while moving was a concern to the cardiologists and other doctors. And my ECG didn't look normal. So depending on how you interpret it, your level of knowledge, it showed that there could be some strain on my heart. I had elevation in the ST segment for V2, V3, V4, so the anterior septal leads. But the good news is there isn't what we call reciprocal changes. So you see the elevation, it suggests that there could be some ischemia or strain on the heart, but you also expect to see some other changes in the ECG that support that. And those other changes weren't there, which is a good sign. But we're also wondering why there was elevation in the first place. Also, my T waves were peaky, so that's again, that's suggestive there could be start of a heart attack. So plenty of doctors looked at that. As a result, I got lots of ECGs, plenty of blood work done. The good news is the bloods showed that there was zero troponin rise at all, so no strain on the heart there. And my CK levels, which will also get complicated with any muscle damage from the race, were really, really low. So, which also kind of ruled out rhabdomyolysis, which was another thing, but there was absolutely nothing in my blood to suggest that that was the case as well. So, 2 days in cardiology, I ended up with an echocardiogram done where they look at the heart through ultrasound from all different angles. They measure everything, the size of the atria, the ventricles, the muscle thickness, looking for anything, whether there's a stenosis or a narrowing or blockage in anywhere in the heart, whether the muscle is big and floppy and is weakened, or if the chambers, like the ventricles, are large and you have what's called cardiomyopathy. They checked everything. And the good news is, not only did my heart check out okay, I was told I'm clearly extremely fit and my heart is in fantastic condition. I can say, unfortunately, I don't have a clear 100% guaranteed answer on why this happened. In some ways, that's a good thing, because if I did have that clear answer, it would mean that something a bit more sinister was found that I'm likely to have some ongoing issues with. But after multiple doctors, multiple cardiologists, nurses, consultation with the race doctor, to and fro messaging, my own knowledge mixed in, the consensus seems to be is it was volume depletion combined with a few other factors that just led to the perfect storm. And I may not have mentioned it earlier in this video, but one of the things that I did notice maybe an hour or so before the collapse, I felt like my stomach had shut down. So what I was taking in felt like it was just sitting right there in my stomach. So it wasn't progressing, there was no fluid there, my body had redirected the fluid or blood supply in my body to keep my muscles working. So the suggestion is I was dehydrated, I didn't have electrolyte imbalance, I didn't have a heart problem, but my stomach had shut down. But the fact that I took the rest and then continued on very slowly is that convinced my body that it was now taking it easier and it could now start processing what was sitting in my stomach, in my gut. And while I was walking uphill, it probably redirected some of the blood flow back into the stomach, which was just enough not to get to my brain. So with the dump of fluid back into the stomach, going really slow, I just had a moment where I didn't get enough blood supply to my brain, and when the brain doesn't get what it needs, which is essentially oxygen and sugar, which is delivered by blood, it goes, hey, you're dizzy, lie down. If you don't do that, it puts you down. And that's what happened. But why did I stay dizzy for afterwards? We don't have an answer for that. The only suggestion that was given to me by more than one doctor, which kind of fits, is because my body had such an insult at the time, it was already fatigued and not doing things very well. It just didn't handle the faint, it didn't handle the drop. And I probably pulled some blood in my peripheries, and despite drinking plenty of fluid at the aid station, having plenty at the urgent care centre, it just took a very long time for my body to get back on track and recover. I guess it's like the feeling that after an ultramarathon you can very likely feel like rubbish, which I often do afterwards. It's just that it all hit me way too early. So the advice I got given after discharge from hospital is take it easy for a good 2 weeks. And one of the best ways to do that is do exactly what I'm doing now, and it's the family holiday out to Bali. Because in scenery like this, how can you not take it easy?